this is Iris West reporting to you from the CW Newscast. Outside Central City today, there was a deadly plane crash. All of the passengers died, and their bodies were too dangerous for us to identify them. But thanks to our local CSI agent, Barry Allen, we were able to identify what was in their pockets and on their bodies. From that, we will figure out who they were and how they died. So I have here some data that Barry collected, and this will help us identify the substances on the clothes and on the victims' bodies. And I'm going to run you through some calculations to identify that. And that will help us identify who the people were who were possessing these substances. I'm going to run you through some calculations to show you how to find out what the substances were by percent composition. This will show us what the empirical formula was, and it will help us identify who the victims were that obtained these substances. So what I did here was I turned the percent into grams, and I divided it by their molar mass. For carbon, I got 6.7921 moles. For hydrogen, I got 8.8294 moles. And for nitrogen, I got 0.6797 moles. I divided it by the least amount of moles, which was 1 for nitrogen. And this helped me get the subscripts for my empirical formula, which you see up here. So C10, H13, N. You don't need to put the 1, because unnecessary. So over here, you can see that C10, H13N was a prescription drug for depression. And the person who used it was Esther Boat. Okay, so now I'm going to find out what was in the pockets of passenger 8. So again, I turned all my percents into grams, and I divided them by their molar mass. For carbon, it was 4.9954 moles, and then for hydrogen, it was 4.4444 moles. For oxygen, it was 2.2208 moles. I divided them all by the smallest, which is 2.2208. And since carbon didn't turn out to be a whole number, I multiplied them all by 4. And that gave me C9H8O4. And as you can see, it is aspirin. It is a painkiller. Okay, so as you can see, there are 2 substances in the pockets of passenger 8. We're going to find out this one now. So I turned all my percents again into grams. And for carbon, I got 5.2918 moles. For hydrogen, I got 5.9524 moles. For nitrogen, I got 0.6618 moles. For oxygen, I got 1.3264 moles. I divided it by what nitrogen was, and for carbon it was 8, hydrogen was 9, and it was 1. Oxygen it was 2. So my formula was C8H9NO2. And here you can see that it was also a painkiller, Tylenol. So using my dad, Detective West's notes, about the victims and my calculations, I connected the substances to the people. Now, let's find out who obtained the following substances. Passenger 1 had cocaine in his blood. So, I tied that to Andy Cross, a professional athlete just suspended for drug violations. So now we know that passenger 1 is Andy Cross. Okay, so passenger 2 had vanilla and theobromine chocolate in his face and stomach. So I know that the baker, Peter Malark, was passenger 2. So Peter Malark, kind of out of the box, is passenger 2. Passenger 3 had codeine in the pockets. 2,000 tablets of those to be exact. So, codeine is a painkiller, prescription controlled. And I know that is James Riley, because he was a suspected drug dealer. Passenger 4 had nitroglycerin in the blood and the pockets. So I tied that to Jim O'Brien because he had a heart condition, and nitroglycerin can be an explosive or a heart medication. So Jim O'Brien was passenger 4. Passenger 5 in the blood was strychnine, and in the pockets was TNT. Because he had TNT in his pocket, I think it might be the terrorist, Douglas Tupy. Also, because he had rat poison in his blood, he was probably murdered before the plane crashed. Passenger 6 had aspartame in his pockets. So that's an artificial sweetener. So I think it is Ellen Abrams, who's a teacher. I did sugar-free drinks. So Ellen Abrams is passenger 6. Passenger 7 had curare and antidepressants in her pockets. So I tied that one to Esther Bowie, who is an environmental engineer and severely depressed. Passenger 8 had aspirin and Tylenol in his pockets. I suspected that it was Mike Huffington, the pharmacist. Maybe he had a really big headache and a backache. Douglas Tupy had rat poison in his blood, so he was murdered before the plane went down. I suspect it was Esther Bowie, who is an environmental engineer and probably knew of the terrorist attacks.